right, here we go. Welcome in. It is Fun Day Friday here at the NBA Tipoff Show, powered by WagerTalk.com, as we get ready for another Game 2 here tonight. Hopefully, maybe, depending on what side you're in, you're going, wow, I hope this is a little more interesting than what we got last night here. And judging from the comments and some of you folks that have been dropping in, like A Life in Vegas, Rich C., it feels like an awful lot of Minnesota love here tonight. The good news is we got one of the best here at Wager Talk hanging with us on this Friday to answer your questions. RC in the house. Ronald Cabang ready to roll here on this Friday as another Game 2 here. RC, welcome in, my man. You are locked and loaded in this game tonight, but I know another question before it comes up is, are you locked and loaded in the WNBA tonight as well?
Yeah. I gotta play. I haven't locked in my play for the WNBA, but I got one coming. I figured out what I want to do with that game. But NBA, I do have one as well. That one's already in there, and then obviously it's some MLB as well. Last week was a tough go. Last week. Hit a little bit of a losing streak, but you covered like the last 5 in the NBA now, and three of the last 4 in the W. So getting back on track after a down week the week prior. So hopefully we're moving in that direction and we stay in that direction.
Yeah, well, it's before we dive into tonight's Minnesota versus Dallas, take a quick look at last night. I believe you were on the over. You were on the Celtics there. So both of those tickets cast for you. But we were just talking. The big question is going to be no Halliburton. I can't see how a couple of days is going to heal this hamstring. I feel like this is the same thing with Anunoby and the Knicks, man. Like, it's good luck. He ain't coming back. And if he does, he'll probably go a couple of minutes and then park his ass right back on the bench again. Not a great spot here for Indiana.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I think we were kind of talking right before the show about how McConnell and Nembhard can step in here if Hallie doesn't play. To be honest, I think it would be better if he doesn't, right? I mean, for me, from a betting standpoint, I would say if he doesn't play, the line moves and we put our trust in McConnell and Nembhard to stay within the help Indiana stay within the number at the very least. Win the game, that's a different question, right? But we're here for the betting part of it, right? So for me, I think if Hallie doesn't play and we get Nembhard and McConnell in, I would only look towards the Pacers with a number that moves probably from, I think it's at 7 right now. It could probably move at least 2 points, maybe 2 points, in my opinion, just because of how important Hallie is for the Pacers. But if he does play and he's playing hurt, that actually hurts from a betting perspective. As far, in my opinion, the line doesn't change. It might even go in the other direction, and you kind of get stuck at a point where, do we know if he's 100 or not? So, in my opinion, it's a play if he doesn't play. A bet on if he doesn't play. In my opinion,
it's just an impossible spot for Carlisle in Indiana. I mean, what are you supposed to do here at this point? But we all know, guys, keep an eye on this. We all know how teams react that first game when when your stud and star player gets hurt and sits out. And I'm sure Boston knows that too. So I think it's going to be a very interesting spot here tomorrow, especially to your point, RC. What the hell happens with that line movement between now and tip-off there tomorrow night? But as far as the line movement goes in this game, and send a big shout out to Loose72 in the house. Hey, Pretentious Prodigy. Love it. Loves the NBA Tip-Off Show. We love hanging with you. Certainly appreciate it. Chris in the house. All sorts of DFS wins last night. Rich C is already hammering the over and Gobert, it looks like, here tonight. Titan CT, Big Daddy, the crew, including, that's it. Wouldn't be a Friday without Kelsey and a bottle of Chardonnay and a straw. Always pleasure to see you there, Kels, again. Good having you here. Shout out to Instagram. And I am seeing here, RC, now we've seen I saw 6s in some spots here. We saw it open at 4.5. I'm seeing 6s. I'm also seeing some buybacks at 5.5. I've got a ticket count 60%, 65% there on Minnesota, both tickets and money, which would make sense why the line has been moving up here a little bit. The total, though, I had at 208. Let's start there. 208 down to 207.5. Where do you think this goes from here? You think we're going to get an awful lot of over money before tip, or do you think this keeps coming down? I'm kind of shocked it hasn't moved down a little bit further to this point, which leads me to believe, RC, maybe some over money is going to flood the market here or closer to tip-off.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, when there's only one game on the board, who's moving the lines and when the action is going to come. But to me, I mean, I think people think of zigzag from a side perspective, right? But I think you could do a zigzag from a total perspective as well. Obviously, when they went over in the first game, I think the under might be the way to go here in the second game. And just thinking about the adjustments that might happen, and it's mainly from the Wolves side. And I think if you look at it from a regular season perspective, what did the Wolves do, best? It was really keep people from scoring efficiently in the paint. They were number one in paint efficiency defense. But they allowed Dallas to score 62 points in the paint, in game one. I really can't see that happening again. I think if they make any adjustments, it's going to be right there. Allow these role players to sit on the 3-point shot instead of trying to allow Luka and Kyrie to get in the paint. So if they can force Luka and Kyrie to kick it out to PJ or Derek Jones, make them make these corner threes or mid-range shots or whatever it might be, I think that's going to make their the Dallas offensive efficiency come down a little bit. They scored 108 points, right, in that game, in that one where they shot 50% from the field, 62 points, like I said, from within the paint. If they eliminate some of those layups or those lobs to Lively and stuff like that, I think, and they get more missed shots from the three, that really only takes four opportunities, four missed layups, 4 layups to miss threes to get them under that 101.5 team total aspect. So for me, if I was to bet anything on the total side, I would actually look towards the Mavs team total under. I think the adjustment is going to be there for Minnesota. Their paint defense is going to be super important in this one.
Yeah, it's It was so interesting the way that game played out, right? The first one, RC, we talked about it all week on the show, where just hated the spot for Minnesota. It was not a great spot coming out of a 7-game series against Denver, coming out of the altitude. And quite honestly, they looked like they were a half a step slow there, right? But in what world here, people, is Karl Anthony Towns shooting 20 more shots than Edwards in any game? Like, what in the hell were their shot selection was all screwed up. They made all of those threes and still lost the game, which is kind of hard to believe here that they actually went that route. If they don't try that route again, and I don't think any of us believe that they're going to be chucking up threes here tonight, what happened? What is this game more like, do you think? The pace is probably not going to be there. This feels like much more free throws and in the paint, and Minnesota trying to bully up on Dallas, does it not?
Yeah, I think, like what you said, we were kind of locked in on that game one, right? In game one, I had Dallas on the spread. I had Dallas on the money line. I had Dallas team total over. I was locked in on that game. We hit all three of them. And coming into this one, I do see like not only the defensive adjustments, but the offensive adjustments as well. Like what you said, the pace of play, I think is going to slow down a little bit. It could be, there's a couple things that I could think of why the Wolves play the way they did, right? Coming off an emotional high, being the previous NBA champions, right? Also, the fact that, they played a whole 7-game series, the rest factor that came into play as well. All these things kind of come into how they came into this game one. I don't think they were definitely not on their game, because they shot 49 or 53s, and on the season they only averaged 33 3-point attempts. That's way off of their game and their style of play. If they come back to what they're successful at, which is play a slow pace, muck up the game, right? They only want to play ugly games and not get other teams into a rhythm. And if they could do that, this is where the Wolves should be able to win and cover this game. And I think
Yeah.
coming from listening to these like the post game interviews with Ant and all that stuff, he's going to attack the paint here. And
Yes.
that's another reason why I really focused in on more so the Mavs team total under versus the under in general. Because if the Wolves get into a rhythm, they get to the free throw line a lot more than they did and shoot at more efficiently than they did in game one. That could mean that they themselves can potentially push this over. So focusing in on that team total was the reason why. Focusing on that Mavs team total was more so than the full game under. I don't want to be on the wrong side if Minnesota somehow just went off in this game.
Right. Yes. I mean, like, that was such a weird start for Minnesota trying to. Now all of a sudden they were the Celtics. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And they still couldn't pull away, which was even crazier that they had that kind of, shot luck there with the threes. They had that kind of positive variance on threes, and yet they could not pull away from Dallas, which was kind of when we went, yeah, this is going to be a problem. Also going to be a problem is that Anthony Edwards, failing to show up the last two games, 12 of 40 from the floor in his last two games. He has got to be better here tonight. So for those of you looking in the prop market here tonight, if you like Minnesota, he has got to be a guy, I think, that elevates here tonight at home. Can't go back to Dallas down 2-0. I think Anthony Edwards is, if you like Minnesota to go off tonight, I think he's the guy it's got to center on. You can't have Karl Anthony Towns chucking up way more, triple the amount of shots than your superstar, which is Anthony Edwards here on his team.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, if you look at the last, you mentioned specifically the last two games that he struggled. I think the biggest thing that you see within those two games, in both games, he only went to the free throw line twice. He has to be more aggressive, stay away from obviously he can hit that 3-point shot. He can get it when he wants to, but I think he has to find his rhythm getting to the paint and getting to the free throw line, right? It's one of those things, and you hear like guys like Reggie Miller, all these guys, the commentators during the game, guys who are in a slump, they can get to the free throw line and get into the rhythm from that aspect and put them back into the game and get their confidence up, right? They just need to see the ball go into the hoop, right? And what better way than to do it at the free throw line when there's no one defending you? And if he can get there and get into rhythm today, then that's going to be a huge plus for Minnesota.
Yeah, and they need to get him going early and often here. Loudy in the chat thinks, listen, Ant may stay under his points prop, but Cat also has to play better, and I agree with that. This is not going to be, and you can see Karl Anthony Towns, his first game points prop was 19.5. So with the volume there, RC, it appears the market thinks a few more of those are going to drop for him. 20.5 is what we're seeing for his points here tonight. If he does go over that and Edwards goes over his, I would imagine maybe a Minnesota team total, if that's the direction you're thinking, is not a bad way to go. You can't have all of these guys going over their props and staying under, right? And it's not exactly a crazy team total to begin with. I think it's 105.5.
Yeah, I was watching a show earlier with Ski and Bino on it, and I think Bino mentioned the Minnesota team total over, and one of the things, the only reason why I kind of stayed off of that is because I do think that Dallas's defense is one of the better defenses in the league as well. Also, the pace of play. I think Minnesota is one of the slowest paced teams in the league. And like I said, if they want to muck up a game, they can do it and still win with a low scoring total. And for me, that's the only reason why I would kind of stay away from that team total. Like I said, focusing in on what I think will happen. And I think the adjustments will be mainly on the defensive side of the ball for Minnesota. That means limiting Dallas's points. But I don't know what's going to happen from the Minnesota's offensive standpoint. I could see what can happen, what adjustments they need to make, but will it lead to more efficiency? I'm not 100% sure. The other thing that I could think of, like if they do go over, I think it would be mainly in the second half. Yeah, from that standpoint, because I think if you look at this game, Dallas took game one, right? Already taking a game from Minnesota at home. If they're down at halftime, they can't find themselves to get back in position to win this game possibly. I could see them kind of like letting off, right? In that fourth quarter. And if that happens, that means Minnesota gets over their team total. But if they think they're still in striking distance and they want to continue to play solid defense throughout, then Minnesota would still win and cover, but still also stay under their team total. There's just so many ways, and especially when there's only one game on the board that you try to tackle, you got to think about every which way to bet and which way the outcome can come across. So, yeah, that's the reason why I stayed off of Minnesota's total.
Michael in the house, Big Daddy in the house. Catch you slipping here. Pleasure, guys, to see you. Michael, Wolves first half over is what he is thinking. 55.5 is what I believe that Wolves first half total. Listen, if you're playing the Wolves in the first half and you're laying, I think it's 3.5, RC, what the first half spread is. I think there's a whole lot of correlating going on in this game here tonight if you're backing Minnesota, including maybe a first half monster effort offensively and expecting that to go over. I will say this, because nobody's going to bring it up, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second, RC. We do realize that Dallas went 6 for 25 from 3 in game one, right? We do realize that there is regression that could take place in this game for Dallas, positive regression. We saw Kyrie show up in the first half, carry him, and we saw, of course, Doncic take over in the second half. I mean, RC, that's a real formula that we could see a lot in this series. And if we do, that's a problem for Minnesota. I don't care how good defensively it is. They just showed that it doesn't matter. Those two superstars can take over a game. And if they're going to do the whole ham and egg thing, you first half, me second half, or, God forbid, both of them showing up in the first and second half, this is a problem. So maybe an over caters to Dallas with these points, maybe a little bit, you thinking?
So I was looking at that too. And the reason why I think that Minnesota would be okay with allowing Luka and Kyrie to dish it out to the corner three or whatever it might be. I think they have better closeout defense from that aspect. I think if you look at the season stats from a defensive perspective for the Wolves, they're one of the better teams at limiting mid-range shots and also the 3-point shot. And I think it really has to do with the length and their closeout speed and their closeout defense in those pieces. And it's a little bit different, right? If you look at other teams that the Mavs have faced, I'm not too sure that defense was there. I'm not too sure that they're seeing that same type of defense. Obviously, they really did a good job of getting into the paint in game one. If Minnesota limits that, forcing PJ to shoot the three, he didn't look as comfortable as he did when in the previous series, shooting that three ball as well. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, as much as there could be some positive regression, this is also an aspect, the defensive aspect that the Wolves are really good at too, right? So,
yes,
yeah, I mean, it can go either way. That's why the playoffs is so tough, right? These are the sharpest lines because there's only one game on the board.
Yes.
Oh yeah. That's the only thing that I could say. To rebuttal on that.
No, I'm trying to think this through here because again, I do think there's a certain script. If you like Dallas, that you can bet in this game and cover yourself. And I think there's absolutely something for Minnesota here, too, and how they can win. I do think Dallas has a few more ways to beat you. I know some of the guys in the chat room, I think, was it Lee? I think Lee in the chat, happy Friday, Lee. Lee's talking about, hey, listen, I think the Wolves should have had that win. They had their chance. They couldn't get it done. Well, that's what happens when you have Kyrie and Doncic. And that's what makes this team so dangerous. We had said earlier in the week, RC, that, listen, a lot was made about the role players for Dallas against OKC. And so That's all fine and dandy. But in a conference final, your superstars have to show up and play. And you got two of the best in Dallas on there, and they showed up to play in game one, which is why they were able to win it on the road. AE and Karl Anthony Towns, 12 of 36. They combined for 35 points. But here's my problem. Karl Anthony Towns was a net -5. Edwards was a net -1. You can't have minus numbers while your superstars are on the court and expect to win a game. So that better hurry up and change in a hurry in this game tonight, RC.
Yeah, I mean, from a series aspect, right? I do think that the Wolves win this series, right? Like, I think before the series started, it was like a plus 140 or something like that on the series. I can't remember exactly what I got it at, but I do think that the Mavs win this series. But from a game by game perspective, just thinking about the adjustments, how playoff series goes, just historically, the fact that the zigzag. I think the last year and a half, maybe the zigzag hasn't been as profitable as it has historically from a spread perspective, but teams are still winning, right? So maybe if you don't feel comfortable with a pregame bet, maybe this is one that you sit out, wait for a live line, because this is the NBA that is a game of runs, right? You're going to find potential avenues in the live line where you might even see a Minnesota at a plus money on the money line. And if you're willing to wait and be okay with that, take the live line. You'll see opportunities there.
I can't stress that enough. Even last night too, in the Indiana and Boston game, you could just tell the algorithm was struggling, trying to figure out how to price Boston. I mean, you even with Boston up 6, okay? Boston was up 6 at the break, which was mind-blowing enough that they were somehow only up 6 after Indiana went 7 friggin' minutes without scoring a bucket there in the at the end of the first into the second, and yet Boston still was only up 6. The line, RC, in game last night as we were on air with it, was the same thing it was pregame, and they spotted him a 6-point. It was minus 8.5 for Boston in game while up 6. So it was, you can tell there is definitely some opportunities live in game here, guys. If you are on the fence one way or the other about this here. Julio Robles saying Tim Hardaway Jr. legacy game. That belongs in Instagram. All right. The day drinking is on Instagram with grind at all times, who is already a 5th of Jameson in, ready to go. I'm actually only kidding, Julio. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. actually is going to play a role in one of these games in the series. And what are you thinking about Kleber, too? They say there's a good chance he's going to try to go in game 3 over the weekend. He's an interesting piece to the puzzle for Dallas, too, because it kind of forces Gobert and company maybe to have to go out to the 3-point line and defend, right, RC?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. He's that guy that can stretch the floor for Dallas, and that's just another shooter to worry about. I think from an aspect of what their roster looks like now in game 1 to game 2, not expecting Kleber to be there, you're trying to figure out who's going to be those role players, to be there for Luka and Kyrie on the corner. And I think Kleber, he might be what I know that he was part of the cap when I took the Mavs series, right? So I think in game 2, and that's the reason why I think Minnesota comes back in game 2 and wins it, because I think in game 3 and game 4, I think Dallas can keep both games at home. And I think if Minnesota's going to take one, it has to be this game, as far as the motivation to get back the home court or whatever it might be that you want to call it. But yeah, this is the spot for Minnesota, and that's the reason why I kind of looked in that direction. And also the thing is, when game 3 comes in, when Kleber comes in, Minnesota is going to have to make an adjustment defensively, like you said, right, with Gobert. But then that also, right, if they bring in Naz Reid, that brings a different aspect from an offensive side for Minnesota as well, because he's able to stretch the court. He also has that guard ability to dribble and take Kleber down, who's not that great defensively. So it's going to be a chess match, and I think if it goes the way that I expect it to go, it's going to be Minnesota in the under today, and then Dallas in the over in Game 3. Right. So
yes,
those are the. I mean, from that aspect, just kind of thinking of it from a series flow, and a game flow aspect with who I expect to come in. And I think when these things like in the playoffs, when it's one game at a time, the lines come in a day ahead. I think these are the types of things as handicappers we have to think about to get ahead of it, right?
yes,
and that's just what I can think of.
Yep. A couple of good questions coming in here, RC. And by the way, it's worth noting, too, I believe Finch apparently lit their ass up, apparently, after the game in watching the film in Game 1. And he's been known to do that a couple of times this year. And if I'm not mistaken, with Minnesota is a team that always responds well, and have under Chris Finch. They've always responded pretty well to a loss, right? And even those guys after that game were like, man, we just didn't have it tonight. Game 7 coming out of Denver, all the things we talked about and we had a feeling were going to happen, they kind of admitted as much coming out of there. It was a terrible spot. Well, there's no excuses here tonight, but that didn't stop Finch from lighting into their ass. But they did. They always have all year responded. I think Denver was the first time, right, that we saw them lose 3 games in a row all season long, and that was against Denver here. And I don't think they want to go to Dallas down 2-0. And if I'm Dallas, if push comes to shove here, your job was to win one of the first 2 games on the road and then come back home, right? You did that. So what are we going to get all together here with Dallas, push come to shove? That's the other part I'm worried about. If this is a 90-70 game heading into the fourth quarter, what the hell are we going to get from Dallas at that point? The job's already done, isn't it, RC?
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Is like, depending on what the score is at halftime and what it is after the third, what do we see from Dallas, right? Whether they're down or not, right? Whether they're down or not, I think. Whether if they're close enough to be able to win this game, I think they're going to lock in defensively, continue to slow down the pace, right? If they are out of the game, don't think they can win. We'll see the bench, the role players come in a little bit, but Minnesota, they're going to want to make a statement. They're going to want to continue to play defense, right, and continue to put the pedal on the floor. And that's the reason why, like I said, I think if that's the way that this game goes, I think Mavs team total under is the play, right? Regardless of what happens, whether they're close, whether they're getting blown out, that team total under seems like it's the right spot, just in my opinion.
Love that, RC. And just for the record, let's make sure I am seeing, and it seems to have come down. It was 101.5. I'm seeing 100.5 right now for the Dallas team total under in this one. And just to make sure, we are seeing some line movement. We did see yesterday on the show, RC, a huge steam move to the over right around the time that S. Warrior shows up. So like 9 o'clock at night. It did come in late, and boy, oh boy, that proved out to be pretty good here. We're starting to see some under money come in on this Dallas team total, both first half and full game. I am seeing 106.5 now. It was 105.5. I'm starting to see 106.5s in for the Minnesota Timberwolves team total. As far as, and I believe, Catch You Slippin' wanted to know exactly what we're seeing percentage-wise from across the board on the books. I am still seeing about 60-65% money and tickets for Minnesota. I'm seeing about 40-45% less spread money on Dallas than before. But the total now, I'm starting to see a push here, RC. 6s popping up across the board. Was 5.5 for a while. Now the 6s are starting to be a mainstay across the board. So the Minnesota Timberwolves money is coming in, but I'll be damned if the majority of this money ain't on the over, and it ain't moving over. So I'm just telling you that right now, guys. I mean, I'm seeing huge money and huge tickets on the over, and this thing has only dropped 208 now to 207.5. there's even a 207 or two starting to pop up. And with the Dallas team totals under here and starting to push down, I guess that makes sense. Full game under, but maybe the best move all around here, RC, is look to fade not just Dallas's team totals, but maybe start to look at some of these props with these guys and say, maybe it's a half a night for Doncic. You know what I mean? What's his PRA, Dan, if we got that up there? It was 45.5 in game one. I do believe it actually went up a tick here. 46.5 RC in his points, rebounds, and assists. But if he's only going to play 3.5 quarters, well, maybe some of these guys are worth taking a look, like Gafford and maybe PJ Washington.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Seeing this box score here, having him see 10 3-point shots. I'm assuming that's above the break. And I just don't know. I think there's going to be. I don't think he's going to. So he's 12 for 26 from the field, and I think you mentioned this before the show too. He didn't look good, right? I mean, and we talked about how, like, in one of the previous interviews, they mentioned, if this was in the regular season, he probably wouldn't have played in the last 2 weeks. So he's continuing to play hurt. And if this gets out of hand, I could definitely see Luka sitting in the last half, at least half of the fourth quarter, and that's going to limit his opportunities to get over that PRA. And then also, like, if he's going to dish it out to these corner threes and all that stuff, and we don't see PJ, Derek, and Josh Green hit these threes, less assist opportunities, right? If they're going to limit the lobs to Derek Lively, less assist opportunities for Luka as well. So I would only look towards the under in that case, if that's the case. Because, I mean, like 26 and 23 shot attempts from both Luka and Kyrie, right? What in the locker room are we saying? Continue to let them cook us? No, right? Like, you got to get the ball out of their hands. So, I mean, especially in the playoff atmosphere, that's the way that I would mentally go through this game.
Yep. I'm kind of with you here. I know another guy getting a lot of love here, and I just saw him referenced a couple of times there, and I believe, I want to make sure I get the quote right here. I believe it was, what do we do with McDaniels? I think Chris in YouTube Shorts asking, do you think McDaniels can keep up this ridiculous scoring of his? His PRA is rising, and, he's draining some threes early in that game, but is he really going to be a mainstay offensively here? Or is he going to regress back to what he should be, which is much more defensive oriented than having to pick up the slack for everyone else not scoring?
No, I agree. I think it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, him shooting 6 for 9 from 3, 9 out of 15 from the field. I mean, those are things that you don't typically see from him. Yeah, he can get hot, but man, at the same time, I think the biggest aspect of their game plan today is going to be defense, and he's going to be one of the main guys to limit Luka. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they put him on Kyrie either, right? Whenever they flip flop on who's on the court, but for the most part, I do see Anthony Edwards getting more of the opportunities. I think we see him get more aggressive, and then we also see. In my opinion, I think Cat is going to continue to do what he's doing, shoot 9 threes from the field or whatever it might be. But I think he's going to be a little bit more efficient, less rebounds, less possessions, more free throw opportunities for AE. From a McDaniels standpoint, from a PRA, if you're looking, I don't know what his number is at, but if anything, I would probably look towards his stocks, his steals and blocks opportunities, because if that's going to be from a defensive aspect or even rebounds, if you want to look at from there, because I think
18
as much as
is his
18.5 for the PRA.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think we see 24 points. I mean, I don't think we see 18 points in general, whatever it is. But for whatever his point props is, but I could see more so on the defensive side of the ball for McDaniels.
I agree 100. Just to get you, 12.5 is his points prop, 18.5 is his PRA. But now that I'm looking, I don't see any reason in the world why we're not betting the over on Derek Lively's PRA, which is 14 and a half, 15 and a half here. The dude, RC, is averaging about 26, 27 minutes a game now. He's got, he's getting at least 15 points. I think he's averaging a double-double here over the last 4 or 5 games here. He has been, and he was really good against them when they played in the regular season. So that seems like a low number to me. If he's going to get the minutes, it's clear he is getting plenty of opportunities here to rack up some points and some rebounds. 14 and a half, 15 and a half for Derek Lively feels like an over bet to me. The kid has been pretty impressive here over the last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, going back to real quick, just to bring back McDaniels, scoring 24 and then having his point prop down to 12 and a half. That's kind of telling in itself that that tells you everything. So that's what I wanted to add to that. But then when it comes to Lively too, I agree. I think it's tough to not get that 14 and a half PRA over. My only thing is if Minnesota's gonna take away these lobs and these opportunities and force Dallas to shoot these long threes, these are longer rebounds, right? And he's gonna get less lob opportunities. That means if he's gonna stay around the hoop, that's less rebound opportunities and that's less points, easy points for him. So I think it's gonna be really tight for that 14 and a half in my opinion, but I would only look towards the over as well in that.
Yeah, I think that's a good look here, guys. I think a couple of these numbers here are interesting. Maybe this is one of those things. By the way, PJ Washington, who didn't, not the greatest of games last game, but seems to show up, him and Gafford, when they need to get a couple of stops, don't they? 12 and a half for PJ Washington in this one. His PRA, 19 and a half. And I know a lot of guys all over Derek Jones Jr., 12 and a half is his PRA here. He is a guy, too, part of that bench crew that people have been cashing a lot of tickets with him over this last series here with OKC. If it ain't going to be Luka or Kyrie, there's got to be some other guys to be able to take the load off. And to your point, you mentioned Naz Reid as well. What kind of game are we going to get out of him tonight?
Yeah, I think that's one piece. Every time when these zigzag kind of opportunities happen, I got to think about what adjustments they make, right? And I continue to look at the defensive side of the ball. And for me, like I said, if it's going to be these long threes and they're going to be missing shots, I think these small forwards, the guards that you're looking at, might get more rebounding opportunities, and that looks towards Derek Jones, right? That looks towards Jaden McDaniels. I think for me, I think it depends on what offensively the Wolves want to do, right? Do they want to get more offense on the board and put Naz Reid in there for 30 minutes compared to 24 that he did in game 1, and that limits Gobert's minutes as well? It's really, this is something that sometimes you got to take game by game and see what adjustments happen. But I think if I'm looking at rebounding props, I would look at these guards and small forwards. I think that's going to be where they go, especially, like I said, if we're going to see a lot more missed threes on the Dallas side, right? And like I said, I think that's a McDaniels look. That's a Conley AE. And what he had 11 rebounds in the last game too, right? So I don't know what his rebounding prop is, but he's going to get the opportunities for sure.
Yeah. Lee points out too, Jones Jr. was big defensively on Ant in that last matchup here. And just to back up too, I just found the numbers. Derek Lively, guys, averaging 27 minutes over the last 5 games. He's averaging 10, 10, and 2 in 25, 26 minutes a game. He is getting his. So that number, I think, stays is still a little bit low on him, ready to rock and roll. And Gobert is also another one I saw that a lot of people were gravitating towards his rebounds. Gobert is 12 and a half, which is exactly what he was in game 1. What are we thinking with Gobert here? Is this the kind of game where Gobert shows up, gets everything, cleans up everything, second chance points? Is this that kind of game for him?
I don't know. I think that's from a rebounding aspect for Gobert. Like I gotta think it's an under type game for rebounds specifically,
I'm
right? If
with
he's
you.
gonna be contesting, if he's contesting these floaters or whatever it is, he's gonna be having to step up, right? He's gonna step up a little bit, show, and and then also the 3 pointing aspect of it, the 3 point aspect of it.
Yep.
Like I said, these are gonna be longer rebounds. So I think his opportunities are going to go down. And also, you brought up Nas Reed in the last segment.
Yep.
If he gets more minutes, that's going to be more opportunities away from Gobert. And one of these things, like what we talked about with McDaniels seeing 24 points and still having a prop number at 12 and a half.
Yep.
If Gobert continues to stay at 12 and a half in his rebounds, obviously he didn't hit in the first game. They don't move it, and they're still getting action on Gobert. I don't know if that's the way to go. I think it's the under.
Yep. They pointed out in the chat, Gobert under PRA cashed quite comfortably last game, and it is a big ass number again in this game here. Let me see, Gobert 26.5 is his PRA here. Yeesh, not necessarily buying that. Nas Reed coming in at 15.5 too with that PRA in this one. Just a quick update as well. Kelsey is talking about spanking and horse meat. I'm not quite sure where the conversation in the chat room is going. It's gone hard left, but it is Friday, and it is, in her defense, she's probably been drinking since about 12 noon. So you are good to go. Don't you worry about it. You spank that horse meat or whatever it is you're doing in the chat room. It's very strange. We've lost complete control of the chat room, RC. So when it all comes down to it here, tell me, if you are looking at this game here tonight, is the Dallas team total where you're looking at? Is that where you're leaning at the most? As I'm seeing another big push towards Minnesota across the board, guys. 6.5s are starting to pop up now in spots. So the money for Minnesota is rolling in. I don't want to say it may still continue to go up here. I think that's fascinating, RC. But is the team total the best look for you here on the show today? Is that where you think you're leaning towards?
Well, I did take, so I gave out to clients the Wolves -5 last night, and I do want to. I wish I took it earlier because when I was doing the handicap on this game again, like I kind of go through it multiple times just to see if I'm missing anything. And especially when we do shows, you want to talk about every aspect of the game. But now that I talk about it and knowing that I had a chance at 101.5, I'm kind of scared to take it because I think you mentioned it's down to 100.5. I know it's just 1 point,
now.
but yeah, I mean it's just 1 point. But when he gets to the playoffs, like I said earlier, it's very sharp. These lines are very sharp. And you don't want to miss a single point, in my opinion. I would only lean towards the team total under, but like I said, I already took the Bulls -5, -6. I think it's still okay. I think when I capped it, I had it at 8. And, the highest I would go, and that's still a lot, to be honest. From whatever the open was, I think 4.5. But every time you get a closing line value, it's always hard to tell people to take a number that you already kind of missed, or not missed, but like you got a better number at, and it's really hard to do that.
Yes, no, it is. Yes, and I would not be shocked. 7s are going to hit the board is the way it is trending right now, guys. Would not shock me at all. And a quick look on the Timberwolves. 106.5 still is what we're seeing. And what about this? I mean, 50.5 is the Mavericks' first half total. Timberwolves still hovering around 55.5. I still think there's a correlation there between the Timberwolves' first half, 3.5, and I don't think that has changed. If I'm not mistaken, the first half spread is now 4.5. I apologize. The money is rolling in on Minnesota now in the first half as well, 4.5. But quite honestly, would it shock you if Minnesota dominated the first half of this game? I mean, in all honesty, if you think they're going to cover that, then there's no way 50 points is going to be rough for Dallas to get to. And then you got to consider, is Minnesota going to make a conscious effort to get to the foul line more, in your opinion, tonight, RC? Because if they do, they're going to be racking up some points early and often in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do. I think that's the way that they go. I mean, based on what Ant said in the post-game presser, I think he's going to be really aggressive. And like what I said earlier, the last two games that you mentioned that he struggled, he only had 2 free throw attempts in each one of those games. And for him to be successful, I think he has to get to the free throw line. And that means, that means points for them. Doesn't necessarily mean points for Dallas. But one thing that I could think of from a total perspective in the first half, and I'm just looking at these trends here. The Wolves first half total at home 31-16 to the under this season. This includes the regular season and then the playoffs. And then off of a loss, 19-10 to the under in the first half. And that just goes to show that they've really focused on that defensive side of the ball coming off of a loss. And that correlates with Mavs team total under, correlates with a lot of things that we mentioned that they're going to make adjustments on, and which is the defensive side of the ball.
Is there and I like that idea too, because the first half total points 106.5 here, and I think they'd be more than happy to win, to go into the break with a 55-45 lead. And that's kind of what it feels like we're heading to with Minnesota, right? That's kind of what, if they come out doing the things that we think they're going to do, the energy level, they're going to make an effort to get to the foul line, then, rhythm is not going to be great for the Dallas Mavericks in this one early and often. But you mentioned it earlier, RC. This is a series about withstanding the punches, right? Again, how in the hell Indiana was only down 6 points after not scoring for 7 minutes in the first half of that game against Boston? Well, welcome to conference finals, right? I mean, it's not enough at this point. So Minnesota's going to have to do a really, really good job of limiting Kyrie taking over, Doncic taking over. They're going to be, I think, they're going to be flying out there tonight. So maybe an under in the first half altogether, 106.5. is not a bad look in this one here. If this gets to a number, or can it get to a number where you can only think maybe going the other way with Dallas? Because I got some guys in here talking about this thing gets to 7.5. Like, how in the hell are we not taking Dallas here at this point in the conference championship?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's tough to call what's going to happen in the end of the game, depending on what. Yes. If they're content with just winning that first game and say, all right, let's take it to Dallas, right? That's the part that I'm really scared of, and the reason why it's tough to figure out, from that aspect, basically, right? So I think that's the reason why I like the team total. If I was gonna play something else other than the spread that I got already, it would be that team total under, because whether or not they're winning close to the Wolves or it's going to be a blowout, I still think that they stay under. And just to go back to one thing that you mentioned about the playoffs and how it affects the totals in the conference games. These are the totals between the Wolves, not the Wolves, sorry, the Celtics and the Pacers in the regular season, right? These are the three totals that I've seen in the last 3 games: 249, 246, 250.5. Those are the last 3 games that they played in the regular season between the Pacers and the Celtics. Come to the conference championships. What are the totals? 225, 221.5. That just goes to show how much slower the pace goes, and how much more effort on the defensive side of the ball. And they show more. I mean, there's more importance to every single possession when it comes to the playoffs. You don't want to take a possession off. So I mean, that's one thing. I know a lot of people. I took the over in both first games, right? Just because of the number and all that stuff too. But don't be scared to at some point take the under, even though these totals are normally not that high. Not that low.
I don't. Especially with these two teams who weren't exactly running up and down the court to begin with. Here, RC. These were not. Dallas had some interesting totals because of the easy buckets they got in transition defense, right? Turning the teams over and getting some easy buckets in transition. But these are both, for the most part, they're half-court teams. And it's going to be even ratcheted up even more at this point, right? I just think there's going to be a lot more sacrifice for Minnesota tonight. And I think sacrifice points in order to make sure Dallas doesn't get any, which could lead to a few easy buckets, but it could also lead to Minnesota being up big at the break here. So I don't see how you can't look Dallas early here, because if you're worried like RC and I am that you don't know what the hell you're going to get in the second half, this game starts to pull away. Although the argument could be made with Doncic and Kyrie, you're probably never that far away. But this is only game 2 of a series in which they've already won game 1. And you got to think they're looking forward to getting back home and handling their business there. So it's an interesting shot here. And let me ask you, RC, you were looking up those trends. Where were you looking those trends up? I'm just curious if you have a place that maybe we can use.
It's actually a site called themoneyballer.com. It's a project that I've been working on. You have every aspect of the matchup between these two teams here. You have, I can come into this show and not have to really do any deep dive. Come to themoneyballer.com and go to the matchup page specifically, see the historic stats, historic matchups, the trends from an ATS and OU perspective, and how teams match up from side to side from a statistical aspect too. We have the offensive ratings, how they rank up against other teams during the playoffs, how they do against each other during the playoffs and in the regular season. It's all there. Like I mentioned it before, but it's like a handicapper's playground. Someone who wants to come in and handicap a game from start to finish, from every aspect of it. And to me, I think being a balanced handicapper is the best way to go, right? I think a lot of people kind of put a lot of emphasis on just trends or just systems or just, historic, trends or whatever it is. But you got to bring every piece to it and see if everything aligns. And then especially when it comes to the playoffs, when the lines and the totals are as sharp as they are, you gotta look at it from every aspect. And like what you were trying to do earlier, you mentioned, all right, well, everything that I said was on the Wolves side. What about the Mavs side? What can they do successfully? You got to think of that when it comes to the playoffs, because it's not as easy as it is in the regular season to kind of take advantage of these numbers that they have.
The Moneyballer, guys, you haven't checked it out yet, please do so. Knowledge is power, guys. The more that you have at your fingertips, the better decisions that you can make. All right, let's check in with what Kelsey is eating and drinking now. Pretty much onto a bottle of, what's that, rosé now? All right, so Kelsey, 2 straws, 2 wines, and a piece of horse meat. It's going to be a hell of an evening for Kelsey here. We're kidding. We love that. Both teams know 110 points are needed for a win. 110 points may not be needed for a win tonight. Do you think, RC? I'm thinking, hey, listen, the team total's 106.5. Sure, they could get to 110, but this feels like maybe both team totals could be in jeopardy of going over tonight.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the games that we saw, so look at the closeout game with with the Nuggets, 98-90. Right, there's instances where they didn't go over their team total on some wins. Same thing with the Mavs side in their previous series as well. To me, with slow-paced teams, defensive-minded teams, they don't have to win with offense. Both of these teams, like you say, are half-court teams. They like to muck up the game and get other teams off the rhythm. Well, that might mean that they have to sacrifice some of their offense, but as long as their opponents are not scoring either, then they're doing their job. And this is that type of series, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree with we said it last night on the show. There it was me and Brian Power, because apparently I lost a bet and had to spend an hour with him there, RC. So that was great. Just talking with Brian Power was great. But I said, listen, there is in that series alone, I said there are probably going to be multiple times where the Celtics are going to cover their 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, and both teams are still going to fly over their totals. And that's exactly what happened again last night. Indiana, even without scoring in 7 minutes in that game, still hit their team total over, and Boston still cleared it. In this one, tell me I'm crazy. This one feels like it's going to be the complete opposite. We're going to have teams winning games, and neither team is going to come close to hitting their numbers. It feels like the complete opposite, does it not?
I mean, it seems like it, right? One thing to think about. So with the Celtics series, right? They went to OT in that first game, and Celtics had that huge rest advantage. And then in the second game, and this is the reason why I took the over in that second game, is because of a historic trend that said not only the pace of play, but also a historic trend that said, off of OT games in the playoffs, the defense tends to struggle in that game right after, right? They all got tired legs. We know the rotations in the playoffs are a lot shorter, and they continue to play in that next game. Rotation, those guys struggle defensively. And if you do bring the guys from the bench into play, most of these guys on the bench are offensive-minded players, and they continue to show that in that game too. And that's the reason why I took the over. But I think Game 3 is going to be an under-type game, in my opinion. I think, obviously, Hallie not being there is going to affect the pace of play, but also just from a flow aspect, I think it's a game that you go back towards the under. From there. And going back to this game here, I don't even know. Maybe it goes under the rest of the way, just based on the two styles of play. But then that's where I look at the trends and the statistical analysis as well. That's where that kind of balanced handicapper comes into play. You gotta look at trends and the stats as well.
Holy good Christ. We got a Rumplemintz comment in the holy Jesus Rumplemintz. God, I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. It's a Rumplemintz kind of night watching this game. I think you could be spot on with that. Good Lord, it's like drinking cough syrup. Please don't. We also have, a big Thunderbird night. That's even more disgusting. We've gone hard left. Hugh G reaction says the Pacers defense is so bad that they're making Drew look like Kobe, and not arguing with that. not arguing with that one either there. My goodness, David Coleman, outstanding stuff there. Guys, don't forget, if you could, hit that thumbs up button for us. Kelsey would much appreciate it. As always there. Trenton, we appreciate it. Loose 72. D Nice in the house, looking at the Wolves here tonight. James Murphy, Rich C, loving it here tonight. Mark Carr, always a pleasure. And, of course, grinded at all times. I do think a pretty good opportunity tonight, guys, to get a couple of middles. Live betting in this game might be available to you. And, RC, you mentioned it earlier. You're locked. You're loaded tonight. What do you got going on at WagerTalk.com? Because we do feel a WNBA play coming up here, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I got one coming up. I didn't lock it in yet. Before I was actually doing more handicapping right before the show for the WNBA specifically. Kind of didn't want to miss this game here, specific. Between the Fever and the Sparks. So I got one locking. I'm going to be locking in right after the show. I talked about the Wolves already. That's something that I give to my clients, and I'm probably going to take that team total under. Even at the 100.5 that it came down to, I think that's the way to go here for the Mavs. And then in the MLB side, I think I have 3 on the board right now. Actually 4. So a lot of volume when it comes to all 3 leagues in play right now. So seeing a lot right now. Like I said, last week was a down week. Getting back on track. It was a 4 in a row or 5 in a row now in the NBA. Back on track in the WNBA as well, and then MLB has. I've been profitable in the MLB throughout. So mainly in that downswing was the WNBA. I started off I think it was like 6-1 in the WNBA, and obviously you can't continue that. You can't continue that. That percentage. So had a downswing and then going back on top, right where I left off last season.
Love that. We also have a lot of folks rooting for Indiana tonight, the Fever, to get it done, RC. Get that W going. Not so much for the Mystics last night, but definitely for Indiana. Nobody wanted anything to do with Washington.
I would say be careful with that fever. You can't.
Ooh.
I don't know if I could see them as road favorites here. I think from a matchup standpoint, the Fever's defense
Yeah.
might struggle against the Sparks team. What the Sparks do well offensively,
Right.
the Fever do they struggle defensively. So that's something
Yes.
that I would say to be careful of.
I love Rita coming in like the last 10 seconds, be like, what have you guys said? Well, just reset it. Just watch. As soon as it's done, it's available, and then you can see exactly what we were saying, and not just us. The best chat room in all of YouTube. You guys rock, as always. Rich C, Michael, we appreciate it. Loose 72. Gotta love people jumping in like the last 30 seconds. Be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah, no shit. You ought to hang out with S. Warrior. He's another guy coming in 3 minutes. Take the damn Pistons in 5. That's what I'm saying. RC, you and I'll see you tomorrow morning for last call. Don't forget, guys, join us tomorrow. We'll have more games and, of course, a whole look at tomorrow's slate. NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball. 11 a.m. Eastern time is when we'll kick it off. Make plans to come back and join us. Hit that thumbs up and make sure you cash a few tickets. Even you, Kelsey, we love you. You guys are outstanding. Enjoy the night. Enjoy the weekend. Come back and see us again soon. We'll talk to you.